Boston Pizza harnessed Fanalytics to help optimize no-look dipping. Ooh, making adjustments so you can stay focused on the game. The playoffs at Boston Pizza, powered by Fanalytics.
Welcome into Daily Faceoff Live, your go-to source for everything hockey. Live every weekday at noon Eastern.
In a round two that has been more or less allergic to close games, we finally have a little bit of spice in the second round. Welcome into Daily Faceoff Live, presented by Betano. Head on over to betano.ca. The game starts now at Betano 19+. Please play responsibly. Bet with your head, not over it. Welcome into Daily Faceoff Live. It is a Thursday, May 11th edition. He is former NHL netminder, current Daily Faceoff analyst, Mike McKenna. How you doing?
Man, I'm happy. Last night, seeing the spice on the ice, like you just talked about in the open, it was good, especially for games that have been so lopsided. Finally, we saw something going on, and the Leafs game was close. So, Leafs in Florida, 2-1.
Yeah, we have so much to get to. If you have a question for me or Mike, throw it in our YouTube chat right now as part of the stream. We'll get to it with our inbox question of the day shortly. We'll also have the coaches' room coming up a bit later and break down some tape with Jon Goyens of the Cape Breton Eagles. Let's start, though, with the Vegas Golden Knights and Edmonton Oilers. Mike, the question is very simple. With Alex Pietrangelo, we now know, getting a hearing from the Department of Player Safety, should one, both, or none of Alex Pietrangelo and Darnell Nurse, who was issued the automatic one-game suspension for instigating in the final 5 minutes, should one, both, or none be suspended?
I think it's pretty simple on Pietrangelo that this should be a suspension. There's nothing close to a hockey play. He looks right at Draisaitl and says, yeah, I'm going to whack this guy. And he hits him really hard across the hands, kind of up maybe more so towards his elbows. But there's nothing about that going after the puck. And I think if you're going to hold consistent with the rule is supposed to be, I mean, Nurse did go after Haig in the final closing minutes of this game, which is an automatic suspension if you hold it up the way it's supposed to be written. So, like, Frank, for me, I think Pietrangelo is an absolute no-brainer. I think there's some gray area on Nurse that the NHL could decide to go otherwise, but I think that they need to stick with what that call was in the first place. And, hey, man, that was a great fight, though. Like, between Haig and Nurse, that's two big bodies swinging hard, and you could really see the passion at play there.
So if you want any evidence as to why this should not be the instigator and automatic suspension, just go to Jesse Granger's feed from The Athletic, who talked to Mark Stone after the game, who revealed that Nick Hague actually asked for the fight at the face-off prior to all of this going down. So if Hague asks, yes, Nurse comes over from a pretty significant distance, 15 or 20 feet away, but if you're asking for it, I'm sorry, that's not an instigator, and therefore that should be thrown out. So the Edmonton Oilers should be retweeting that from their big social account today, just to make sure that the Department of Player Safety knows that that should be rescinded. And more to the point, Mike, Darnell Nurse and the Edmonton Oilers don't explode if Alex Pietrangelo doesn't try and tomahawk off the arm of the best player in the Stanley Cup playoffs to this point. Now, we could have a whole separate side conversation and argument as to whether or not Draisaitl and McDavid should have been on the ice that late with the game out of hand. But I think the NHL Department of Player Safety has to be exactly that. Player safety. They need to be the deterrent. You can't go after a player of that caliber. And I know they say take the player out of it, take potentially injury out of it, all those things. And the fact that maybe this one didn't have an incredible amount of force when it was all said and done doesn't matter. That's the sore loser slash of the year. Very uncharacteristic from Alex Pietrangelo, and something that has no business in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
And it could leave a big mark on the series, because to me, Pietrangelo, throughout the entire course of the 2022-23 season, he's Vegas's best player. They use him in all situations. The Golden Knights need him. Now with this series at 2-2, it would look a lot different without him in the lineup. Same way with Nurse on the other side. But I think Pietrangelo plays an even bigger factor for the Golden Knights.
Yeah, and I would say if you don't want to miss one of the best of three remaining, have some composure. Have your veteran leadership that you're supposed to have as a former captain in this league, to not do something as stupid as raise your stick over your head with a baseball-style swing at an opponent. You can't do it. And I just hope that the Department of Player Safety, when it comes to this, doesn't also, back down and say, maybe we'll even things out because we don't want to influence a series, and say we'll just give the suspension to Nurse or keep it there and also suspend Pietrangelo, making this essentially a wash. Because those two things, there's no chance that both of them could be equal in my eyes. Let's talk about. No, sorry to cut you off. Let's move on to the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Bruins were out in South Florida, Mike. And you look at the way that the Leafs were able to stave off elimination. Maybe the most frustrating part of that, if you're a Leaf fan, is saying this is one of their most complete efforts of the season, let alone the playoffs. Where was that in Game 3? Because we could be having an entirely different conversation today, that the Leafs could be heading back to Toronto tied, and instead they trail in a 3-1 hole that looks just as daunting as it did prior to Wednesday night's win.
It's almost like the Maple Leafs need to realize that they don't have to score 3, 4, 5 goals to win games if they can just buckle down and play defensively. And that was a big key to the game, obviously, for the Toronto, is that they did manage to limit the offensive chances of the Florida Panthers. And, I went back and I looked at the shot map of where shots came from in Game 3 for the Panthers and then in Game 4. And if you take a look at it, you can see that in Game 3, the Panthers got most of their shots, high danger shots, right and tight. I mean, we're talking 16 within the really prime scoring area in front of the net, between the dots. And then you look towards Game 4, there's hardly anything there. And, for a night where you've got a rookie goaltender in Joseph Woll making his first playoff start, you'd want to make his life a little more uncomfortable. And I don't think the Panthers were able to do that because Toronto was so engaged defensively. They were quick on pucks. They were quick out of their zone. They blocked shots. They kept it to the outside. And yeah, Woll did play well. He made 24 saves, but he's able to swallow up everything from the outside and not give rebounds. So, I think the Leafs got a pretty good bounce right off the bat with a puck off the referee's knee to Nylander. It probably got him going a little bit, Frank. But bottom line, came down to defense. And Toronto was better in that area in Game 4, looking to go back to Game 5.
Pete Blackburn made the joke on Bally Sports that the Leafs only scored one goal in that game that was not primarily assisted by the official, which was hysterical. But, hey, look, things like that happen, and the Leafs deserve the bounces with the way that they played. Now, when you look ahead, they essentially need to string together 9 consecutive periods like that in order to pull this off. I doubt we'll see another effort like that from the Panthers. Not that it was a bad one, but just in terms of being able to generate some of those high danger chances, can the Leafs actually pull this off?
The Leafs are done. They can't pull it off. 3 more in a row. Could they? Of course, maybe they can. But, man, I don't see it, because to me, the Panthers finally had an off night. I think they'll bounce back pretty strong. But I do want to give some credit to Sheldon Creef, taking that timeout after Sam Reinhart scored with about 8 minutes left in the third period. I thought that was a really smart play on his part to settle things down, and the Leafs were great from there. They only allowed 4 shots in the last 8 minutes. But winning 3 more games in a row against a Panthers team that's been so red hot, I think it's a tall task, Frank. I think the Leafs are done, but I guess you just never know in the way playoffs are.
Yeah, it was a great point about Sheldon Keefe, and I thought the comments the other day from Jim Montgomery were really interesting as the Bruins finally broke down their season with their post-mortem press conference, and he was essentially saying, I wish I was in the moment more. Maybe took a time out here or there to settle things down, or did something a little bit different. You kind of asked the same question of Jay Woodcroft having Draisaitl and McDavid on the ice late in the game. Sometimes these things just tend to get away from you. Nice to see some composure there from the Leafs, and what was a pretty incredible moment having that lead cut in half. They could have easily packed it in Game 4 in general and just rolled over and been swept. But the fight and to stay in it, I thought was pretty impressive. Let's see if they can do it again and again and again, which is what's required in order to win this series and advance to the Eastern Conference Final. Speaking of advance to the Eastern Conference Final, the Carolina Hurricanes can do that on Thursday night, Mike. Will they close out the Devs in Game 5?
I think they do, even though I think the Devils are bound to play a lot better. There's just been a lot going on for the Devils in this series that I haven't liked. They've gotten run out of the building on several occasions. Yeah, they came back and they played great in Game 3, but Game 4 was just another mess. And, whether you can look to Vanacek or Schmidt, whoever is playing goal, which I think Schmidt will be the starting goalie here in Game 5, they haven't gotten many saves. They also haven't gotten the depth scoring that the Devils had throughout the season. And to me, the puck management and the giveaways have just been a crusher for the Devils in this series. Last game, in game 4, giveaways, Frank, they were 26-2. Okay. The Devils gave the puck away 26 times, Carolina twice. That just speaks to the 4 lines that Carolina rolls. And it's causing havoc with the Devils and the game that they've done so well this year, and that's possessing the puck. They haven't been able to do it against the Carolina Hurricanes. And, Carolina, one, they got a great penalty kill, so they're not giving Jersey any space with that at all. Jersey has to do it 5-on-5. Carolina's been the better team that way. And some of those players on Carolina, Frank, I talked to an NHL coach last year who I really respect, and he was previously a coach of Dougie Hamilton, and he said, you can't win with Dougie Hamilton. And I just went, what? Like, it was such a striking comment, Frank, that it stuck with me. Well, in this series, Dougie Hamilton, hate to say it, it's not going well, man. Like, he's -9, 0 points in the whole thing. And he's not alone here. I'm not saying he's the only guy, but it's just something that did stick with me. And I think that the Devils just in general are going to have to manage the puck better and be able to break through Carolina in the neutral zone and have a chance in game 5.
The series scoreboard that we just had up there will never not be amazing to me. Jordan Martinook, 9 points. I mean, that came out of the absolute clear blue sky. And I said, again, not to pat myself on the back, my arm isn't long enough, but I said before the series started that depth scoring, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, I called him the X factor. If someone like him can get going in this series, if they can have players step up in the same vein that the Seattle Kraken have had all playoffs long, why can't the Carolina Hurricanes win? And that's essentially what we've seen play out. Their disciplined approach, their consistent approach, way more consistent than New Jersey, has been one of the big difference makers. And I just look at the Devils and I say, they seem to me to be a team that's cooked. I know you said they're going to play better, and I fully expect that. But the way that they, not just their fans left the building, some of them bawling, by the way, but the way that the players left the ice, the looks on their faces told me a lot in game 4 as they were run out of the building. So we'll see. Carolina hoping to advance to another Eastern Conference final. They were just there a few years ago. And by the way, Mike, just as a complete aside, without the spiciness that we've seen in Vegas and Edmonton, has this been maybe one of the most uncompelling second rounds we've had in a while?
Only because the games have been blowouts, eh? Like, it's kind of been weird. Honestly, there's been games where by the end of the second period, you're like, why am I even watching the third? And finally last night, Vegas and Edmonton gave us something to watch there towards the end. So in some ways, yeah, it has been lackluster.
But even with like 5 minutes left in that first period, you pretty much knew the result last night in that Edmonton game. It was the festivities at the end. That's all that made it interesting. Let's get to some news on this Thursday. We reported yesterday that Keith Jones and Eddie Olczyk, 2 Turner Sports analysts, were the finalists for the Flyers President of Hockey Operations job, which the team announced on Thursday is indeed official. Keith Jones' new president, Danny Briere, rips off the interim title, and he is now the permanent GM of the Philadelphia Flyers. They will hold a press conference on Friday to discuss what they're already calling a new era of orange. Mike, what do you make of the hire? Keith Jones going from longtime broadcaster, both in the Philadelphia market and on the national stage with NBC Sports and now TNT, now elevated to the president role for the Flyers. What do you think?
Well, I'm excited about it because I really like Keith Jones, first off. Somebody who was really gracious to me when I started to do broadcasting, and he's like that with everybody. And that's something that's a quality you got to look for. And we've seen this before. John Davidson's gone from a broadcaster to the front office. Dale Talon did it with Chicago previously as well. On-air analysts tend to know the league as well as anyone, not just their own team. And Keith Jones is very passionate about the Philadelphia Flyers and the entire Philadelphia area. That matters. But you're going to be running here with not a whole lot of experience. Daniel Briere, he was an understudy for 2 years, but he's never been a GM. Jonesy's its first time in hockey ops. So I'm cautiously optimistic because I think you've got 2 really smart guys, 2 people that are very hungry for this job, that are passionate about Philadelphia, and that, especially on Jones's side, knows the league inside and out, from the coaches to the players to everybody that he sees in the press box that he talks about on air. So Frank, I just say I'm cautiously optimistic here and I do like that they went outside the box a little bit. It wasn't just another retread from somewhere around the league.
Yeah, I hear you there. It is definitely different. It's interesting watching our YouTube chat, someone commenting that instead of a new era, it is a new error. And look, I think that remains to be seen. I think that's harsh.
Yeah.
To your point, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say a bad thing about Keith Jones at any point ever. Highly respected and someone that I think is going to be a really strong communicator, which is essential in this position. The Flyers need relevance. They don't have any in this market. It's the first time in my lifetime being a lifelong Philadelphian that they don't have any. And it's going to be a long road back to that. I think everyone recognizes that. Danny Briere in general. He was just on Frankly Speaking with me a couple weeks ago, basically saying there's no shortcuts here. There's no chance that this team can just reboot in the next year or two and get back to being the consistently excellent Flyers organization that we've basically known for much of its 50 plus years of existence. So they've got a lot of work to do, but if you've got a strong communicator and someone who can be a guiding voice and light for Danny Briere, someone to bounce things off of, and keeping the work ethic that Danny Briere has, showing up to rinks, being your chief talent evaluator, someone that has a nose for the work that you need for this job, I think they can be really successful. My question is, how does all this work also with John Tortorella having a clear and big seat at the table in terms of the decision-making process? John Tortorella, if not for Mike Sullivan, is the most powerful coach in the league at this exact moment in time. The Flyers acknowledging in their press release that he is essentially going to have a huge role in the decision-making process. That's sort of unprecedented. Coaches always have an opinion or whatever, GMs bounce things off of them. But for John Tortorella to have a seat at the table, this is sort of a three-headed monster now. And I'm curious to see how all of those different pressure points come together to make this all work. Because, like I said, the Flyers, in order to make this successful, Danny Briere, Keith Jones, John Tortorella, they all need to bring a shovel to work on Monday because they've got a lot of digging to do to get out of the mess that they're in.
Yeah, I agree with you. And just real quick here, Frank, to wrap this up, what was the reaction in the Philadelphia market?
It's been really mixed. I think, first off, people were chuckling, saying, like, I can't believe you had two search firms to tell you that you should hire your team broadcaster, for one. And I think the other thing, too, is I think a lot of people were hoping for fresh blood, people that haven't played for the Flyers, people that haven't worn that jersey before. So I think unfairly, both Keith Jones and Danny Briere come in with this sort of tag of like the same old. And I don't think that's the case at all, but that's how the marketplace sees it. So it's going to be up to them to sort of be inventive and creative and do things in a different way than it's been done in the past, which is basically a patch job year after year to try and chase that elusive Stanley Cup that, they achieved success in years 6 and 7 of their franchise that has been, lingering for so long now. That was their mantra: win, 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 win. It was like they were the hockey version of Al Davis, just win, baby. And that's it's cyclical in the NHL now with the salary cap. I think they get it. Danny Briere certainly gets it. We'll see if they can pull it off.
Like Mike, to see this jersey here. I retired with them, so I'd like to see it.
And by the way, going to be bringing back the burnt orange. As you see, a new era of orange. It's a nod to the Flyers making their look a little bit different as well. Let's get to the coach's room. Let's break down some film with Jon Goyens. This is the coach's room, and it is powered by the new Fanalytics menu at Boston Pizza. Deep fried pickle wedges, beer mosas, pizza flights. There is no better place on the planet than to catch all of the Stanley Cup playoff action at your local Boston Pizza with the new Fanalytics menu. That's right, he is Jon Goyens. This is the coach's room, and he is the head coach of the Cape Breton Eagles in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. Jon, so great to have you back on the program after rejoining us last week. And I wanted to talk to you about the Florida Panthers forecheck And what has made them so effective in these playoffs? They slayed the Dragon. That was the Boston Bruins in round 1, and they're pretty close to knocking off another really good team in the Toronto Maple Leafs. What have they done in the offensive zone that's made them so effective?
The simple answer would be the aggressiveness, but the reality is their F1 just disrupts, and he's got to get a piece of anybody and everybody that touches the puck. Their F2 isn't predictable. He's reading the next play as quickly as possible. And as we queue up these clips and let them roll, we're going to see how quickly they disrupt and how quickly they want to take away time and space. They've got great sticks. Here you're going to see Verhaeghe. He's just going to place and chase. But you could also see Duclair right here. He's just going to read. He reads the next option is up the wall, but also reads that he has to reload and get above. It's a very mature way of playing the game without being too specific in your routes. And they get a piece of you at all costs. Here, bang, get a piece of the guy even after he's dished the puck. Put him under pressure, make him think. Here, they just get open. They keep moving the puck. And again, a reload. The original F1, is now your F3 and getting a prime scoring chance. Disrupt, set, breakouts. Watch here. No set breakouts. Don't let the other team get comfortable. Be a pain in the butt, and here come fresh legs right off the bench. Another scoring chance. So you get the other team constantly and consistently scrambling. Marner thinks, hey, I'm going to just set up for a set breakout. Wait a second. Here comes Anthony Duclair. Speed and a great stick. Again, disrupt and no set breakouts. What happens? They make plays under pressure, and it opens up opportunities. And right to the very end on this last example, F1's got to get a piece. Then you're going to see Sam Bennett. He's not running a specific route. He knows he's just got to get a piece and now put this guy under pressure. Now they open it up. Boom, it's in the back of the net. So they just take away time and space in a very logical manner.
So, John, what you've just described is something I've called intentional recklessness from the Florida Panthers. And to me, that's kind of what their F2 does. There's not a real set route, but ready to read and react. So once the Panthers establish that forecheck, what do they do in zone to be able to create the offense that they have so far?
Well, we've touched upon this last year about the whole concept of using the trapezoid, being a pain in the butt to really, observe and know what's around you as a goalie. If you constantly have to see which way the puck is going, east, west, behind the net, and it's not just the rim releases or carrying the puck through that area, but it's also just getting into that area and battling and stealing pucks. And again, as we let these clips roll, they use the trapezoid area as good as most teams. And right now they sit third in the league for 5-on-5 goals of pucks traveling through the trapezoid area. Again, F1 getting a piece. Reinhart seals off the second post. Bang, it's in the back of the net. Off these types of plays, you are constantly getting the D zone coverage to not be comfortable, right? Guys are not used to getting outside their element. Are they playing a man-to-man, a box plus one? Are they going in layers? But if the puck constantly travels through behind the net, the other part is that you don't play with turnovers near the blue line. You're playing with potentially turning over the puck or losing a battle 200 feet from the net. And again, you get teams to collapse. They lose sight of a player. Bang, you got to have a quick strike mentality. And this, obviously, this last one, pretty famous early in this series, is release the puck, look at everybody's attention, go to the puck. Goalie can't track it. It's just a bang, bang play, but you got to use the whole entire zone instead of getting squished or squeezed in a quadrant portion of the zone.
So, John, I love the approach from the Leafs in Game 4. They seemed a lot more comfortable. They didn't feel like they needed to press for the offense, and they were willing to, as Mike said, earlier in the show, they were comfortable winning a game 2-1 or 2-0, whatever it might have been. So, can they take any of Florida's offensive zone strategy and instead of essentially relying solely on scoring off the rush, can they mimic some of that and sort of turn the tables on Florida?
I absolutely agree, because again, if you just think that you're going to score off the rush, then you are also susceptible typically and analytically to potentially having turnovers that bite you in the butt going the other way. It's just going to happen. The numbers support it. So if you are willing to relinquish the possession to reload in another area of the ice, to get defensive zone coverages, to move and get uncomfortable and spin and become puck focus with their skill set and their quick strike abilities, then they could absolutely use this as a strategy, because currently they are last in the teams that are left in the second round. They are last in goals that are scored through the trapezoid area at 5-on-5. And as we see the game-winning goal yesterday, not only did they use the trapezoid area to release pressure, here we got a 1-on-5 situation, they go to it 4 times, right? They don't force a block shot. They don't force a turnover. It's a different version of possession, but they have an opportunity to create off of what seems like chaos and getting Florida to run around. They regain possession. Now they get their D moving around and nobody gets Marner at the top, and they win the race to the front of the net. And that's probably the last spot, is when you start doing this and then you get your load of highs, it's how quickly defensive coverages seem to lose the net presence guy as he sprints to either box out or just get in the eyes or just create that chaos. And I thought Toronto, if they can adapt this to their arsenal, if you will, I think that this will get Florida's defense running around, and they might not be able to keep up with this type of pace.
Yeah, it's amazing to see the puck pass through that trapezoid 4 separate times in that sequence. The trap goal, as you like to call it. Jon, love to tap into your hockey brain. You can follow Jon, who is the coach of the Cape Breton Eagles, on Twitter, gourmet_hockey. Thanks so much for joining us today for the Coach's Room, which is powered by Boston Pizza and their new Fanalytics menu. All right, Mike, we are running short on time, so our inbox question of the day, I'm going to keep it really simple for you. The Carolina Hurricanes are the current betting favorite for the Stanley Cup. Does that make sense to you?
Not with a 17% power play. I keep doubting them, though, Frank, which means they're probably going to do it. And Jordan Martinook's going to win the Conn Smythe.
Yeah, I'm going to say that second part isn't going to happen, but he might win the Conn Smythe of the second round. Yeah, I'm not seeing the Canes as a clear Stanley Cup favorite. Betano.ca had them earlier today. Plus 275. I believe the Oilers were plus 350. So some interesting bets out there, which brings us to Tyler Yaremchuk and our daily Faceoff Betano daily bet segment. Tyler, what do you make of that?
Yeah, that's interesting to me. I mean, you're basically getting the Canes. If you view them as a lock to go to the next round, then it makes sense. I'd be sprinkling on the Florida Panthers, though, Frank. I just think in round 3, you get a look at them against the Canes. They might be a handful, and then who knows? The Stanley Cup playoffs is whatever, so they're lower down the odds board, but I like them. Let's stick to tonight, though, over on Betano. The game starts now at Betano.ca, and I'm just making 2 bets on this Canes-Devils game tonight because I think it was solid. The Canes on the puck line, plus 187. If they're going to win, I think it could get to a point where the Devils just fold up a little bit. And also, you always see the extra aggressive goalie pull when teams are facing elimination. So I love the juice here. Plus 187 is such a good payout. And I think the Canes at home, that building's going to be rocking. They'll be motivated. I also like the over. It's hit a bunch of times in this series, so I see no reason why it can't hit 6 goals tonight. I love getting an over when the price is set at 5.5 like this. So give me over 5.5. Canes on the puck line. 2 plays for 1 game tonight, Frank.
Love to see it. And like you said the other day, I don't know how many 2-game nights we have remaining in the playoffs. Yeah. So this could be it for a little while, maybe a couple more. That brings us to garbage time with Mike McKenna. What's caught your eye? What's caught your attention from around the hockey world?
Paul Maurice post-game against the Leafs. Pretty simple as that. Roll a tape here when you get a sec. And really, for me, it's just that Paul Maurice, he knows that losing 1 game when you're up 3-0 isn't the end of the world. I think he understands how important it is to keep that locker room loose. So here he is.
Keep it coming. Just try to hide your glee. Relax. You look like the coach's office.
That's the Toronto media he's playing around with. Of course, previously a head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs from 2006 to 2009, and Frank just keeping them in check a little bit, told him not to enjoy this win too much. But I thought it was a fun, loose moment. And again, I think he's reading his own locker room, knowing that he cannot take one game as the end of the world for the Panthers.
He also quoted Will Ferrell during that press conference, which was perfect in my books. Paul Maurice, appointment viewing in terms of NHL head coaches and their press conferences. You know what else is appointment viewing? Daily Faceoff Live, Friday. You and Tyler Yaremchuk breaking down all of Thursday night's action. We'll see you then. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to Daily Faceoff Live. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.